I feel like everyone today is kind of just on go, go, go. And I feel like no one really finds the time to rest, especially when it comes to work. I feel like everyone kind of struggles finding, a work life balance. And I've said this in previous videos before where I feel like people will burn themselves out a lot quickly that way and they'll just kind of find themselves in a hole. And me personally, I feel like I'm not saying like, don't put in the work and don't grind and don't lock in or anything like that. But I'm saying at the end of the day, I feel like you need to have balance. You need to find a way to have balance. You always need to find a way to basically find peace in a way with, everything going on. I know right now in the world, everything's super expensive. A lot of people are struggling more than usual. Everything's up, the economy's up. And I feel like right now, with that being said, we're all put in a position where we have to, be always on a grind mode and always locked in order to not fall behind. And not only that, but I feel like when you're always on that grind and you're always technically like locked in, sometimes I feel like people, not only do you feel burnt out, but I feel like people feel like their work goes unnoticed because you're kind of like a robot, right? You're kind of just going, doing day by day the same thing over and over, and you kind of just feel like nothing's really sufficient for you. You kind of just feel like, I don't know how to explain it, but I feel like for me personally, you kind of feel like you're locked away. And like I said, I don't want people to think like, oh, I'm saying, take days off and not lock in or not doing anything like that. But I'm saying if you're doing the work, you're putting, loads of overtime and you're doing what you need to be doing, I feel like you need to take time off. You need to take that break. You need to have time for your hobbies. You need to have time for family, have time for friends. And not only that, but you need to have time for yourself. That's where I'm saying, like, I feel like you shouldn't be always interested in working all the time. And I know for some people, like, some people don't have a choice. They have to constantly work or they will fall behind, or people have families they have to take care of, or just in general where people feel like they have people that count on them where they don't have time to take that break off. So with knowing that and knowing the extent of that, I know that that's not a luxury for some people. But if you're not at that point, I feel like even if you are at that point or you're not at that point, I still feel like you have the ability to pace yourself. You know what I mean? Like you can do all types of things to find your pace, like, finding specific work hours that work best for you and your schedule. And like I said before, like I know some people don't have that ability and they don't have that luxury of being able to find, the ideal job or, the ideal work hours or just the ideal schedule. I know I've been there and I understand that it's a lot harder that way, and some people's journeys are a lot harder and some people's journeys are also just, a lot easier compared to others. It just depends on what works for you. This is not, this is not like a recipe that works for everyone. This is what you need to find, what works for you in your day-to-day life and what applies to you, because everyone's going to have different situations, everyone's going to have different responsibilities, everyone's going to have different people counting on them. And obviously I know not everything's the same for everyone, so I just want to point that out. But like I said, even still with that, I feel like there's always a way. If there's a will, there's a way, right? I feel like at some point everyone has heard this, and I've heard this multiple times, and people have told me this over and over and over. And I mean, if you really want it, you're going to be able to do it. But also, I feel like you need to be, kind of strict with your time management. Like for me, like I would work, come home, go to the gym, and then after I did all that, then I would find a way to make time for myself where it'd be like making videos for you guys, playing video games, hanging out with friends, hanging out with family, or doing whatever I need to do that, helps me find peace in my life, so that way I don't feel like I'm always drowning in my work, basically. Life is short, and I feel like for me personally, I don't want to always be drowning in work and always stressing about work and work this, work that, because after a while, it gets tiring. Take your breaks. I know I've said this over and over in this video, but find a way to take your breaks. Find ways to take 30 minutes to just, enjoy time by yourself if that's all you have, 30 minutes to an hour. I mean, there's 24 hours in a day. I know everybody doesn't work 24 hours, but I know a lot of people do work a lot of hours to where, sometimes you don't really have a lot of time to do stuff for yourself. But like I said, if you have the ability and you can, I'd highly recommend taking breaks when possible. Also, too, try to go on vacations. There's a lot out there in the world. Try to experience something you haven't experienced before. It doesn't have to be something crazy. Like, I'm not saying, book a flight, go all the way to Hawaii and, spend all your hard work and money and, go from there. But, do something, do something like a little vacation. It could be, It could be any. It literally could be you buying an Airbnb and you spending time away from everyone and kind of just resetting and taking that time off where it's just you and nothing else and no work involved and nothing too crazy. It's just you being able to take a break, kick your feet up and rest. I know nowadays like we've kind of made it, we've kind of overhyped like just never taking days off and always just grinding our life away. There's more to life than just always working, always making money. There's gonna be a time where you're no longer able to make money and you're not gonna be able to do all these types of things that you want to do. And if we're young or if you're young, that's the best time to kind of just take advantage of everything that you got. With that being said, I know I've said it multiple times as well, but make time for your hobbies. That's very important. Do something what makes you happy. A hobby can be anything. It could be going to the gym. It could be painting, making music, art, clothes, fashion. It could be all types of things. It's whatever that aligns with your lifestyle and what you got going on in your own personal life. Like I said, everyone's life is different. Not everything's going to be the same for everyone. Do what you got to do. Let me know what you guys think below in the comments. I read every comment. I try to reply to every comment to the best of my ability. I always love hearing your guys' feedback. I try to take constructive criticism as best as possible. And at the end of the day, I'm only here to, spread knowledge and whatever that I know to the best of my ability to help you guys, whether you guys take it or not, or whatever the case may be. But as always, thank you guys for clicking on the video and leaving feedback if you do. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.